Hello everybody, welcome back. The Music Fan is here, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather today, but I'm going to power through for a couple of very interesting RU-ins. So let's get the ball rolling. And today I am talking about Esperanza Spalding's newest album entitled 12 Little Spells. Now, if you don't know who Esperanza Spalding is, she's an American jazz bassist and singer from Portland, Oregon. Her previous albums include Junjo in 2006, Esperanza in 2008, Chamber Music Society in 2010, Radio Music Society in 2012, Emily's D+Evolution in 2016, and Exposure in 2017. Now, she is currently one of my favorite jazz artists going. She is absolutely incredible, has a beautiful voice, has some amazing bass prowess, and is just a very interesting writer. I didn't get to know her until my time at UMass Amherst, specifically when some of my vocal jazz brethren were singing some of her songs, in particular one of the songs being I Know You Know from her second album. I didn't get to listen to a full album of hers until Radio Music Society, so I was a little bit behind on the game, but I loved Radio Music Society. A lot of great songs, including Radio Song on there, and it introduced me to a very funky and very interesting side of jazz that I don't know as much of at that time. Fast forward to 2016, I was kind of in a musical slump. I wasn't really interested in listening to any particular music. I was just in a very bad state of mind and just kind of fell out of touch of the love of music that I had. But on a whim, I listened to Emily's D+Evolution and I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. It was far different from her stuff on Radio Music Society. It was a little bit more experimental, a little bit more modal rather than just straightforward jazz, more on the lines of like a Herbie Hancock or Charles Mingus or stuff like that, but it still had that funk idea and sentiment on a lot of these songs. It was beautiful, it was hard-hitting at times, the lyrics were very interesting, and talking about a lot of societal problems at the moment. It was easily one of my favorite albums of that year, and if it wasn't for Affinity by Haken or the Act 5 from Deer Hunter, it would have been my favorite album of the year. It's incredible. I urge you to listen to it if you haven't already. It's one of the best jazz albums I have heard this decade. Now, I had not heard a lot of her since then, and again, was not even thinking about her until I looked at the Rolling Stones Top 50 albums of this year and saw that her name was on it. Because I have been trying to follow a lot of what's going on in the music industry. I try to look at and see when a certain album dropped out. And even when I'm looking at stuff like Pitchfork or Metacritic, I'm looking to see what the new releases are. And I'm listening to the Needle Drop and I'm listening to other album reviews places. And no one talked about this album. It wasn't even on the idea of releases for Metacritic. And I constantly update that page. So that came as a shocker to me. And when I looked up to see if this was true, not only was that true, I had also missed another album called Exposure. And looking into that one looks very interesting. It was made in 77 hours. I want to take a look in that one as well because, of course, I loved her previous work. So immediately I dived into this album and here's what I think about it. It's even more experimental than Emily's D+Evolution. I don't know if it's more experimental than Exposure. I haven't been able to listen to that. But at least with Emily's D+Evolution, there was that hint of funk and that, being able to have a more concrete form in time. A lot of these songs eschew that for more of a rubato and more of a free-flowing idea, more of a free-form jazz than funk, if you will. But there are some more straightforward songs on here. Just some of them are more open than others. All this album is odes to particular parts of the body. So for example, going down the list, 12 Little Spells is an ode to the thoracic spine. To Tide Us Over is an ode to the mouth. Until the Next Foal is about the eyes. Thang is about the hips. Touch in Mind is about the fingers. The Longing Deep Down is about the abdominal portal. You Have to Dance is about the feet. Now Know is about the solar portal. All Limbs Are about the arms. Readying to Rise is about the legs. Dancing the Animal is about the mind and the brain. And With Others is about the ears. Now, I've never heard of the abdominal portal nor the solar portal. So, any of you doctors or people who know more about the body than I do, please let me know what the heck those are, because I feel like those are made up, but who the heck knows. In that idea, you get a lot of very free-flowing lyrics, more of like a slam poetry idea. Because of this, the form of the song doesn't necessarily matter. It just, whenever she gets to the end of her idea, sometimes it fits onto the beat, sometimes it doesn't. 12 Little Spells is the opening song, and it has this very orchestrated idea, kind of like early jazz with more horns, but also has this kind of bossa nova-y, bolero kind of feel in the drums, and there actually is a nice little beat to it. Now, throughout the album, what I really, really like is she's singing some of the most intricate and complicated melodies that I have ever heard in jazz. Just the chromatic work throughout the album is so interesting, and it makes me wonder how she came up with some of this stuff and how she can remember it, honestly. For example, on 12 Little Spells, at one part of the song, you get this very interesting chromatic scale going down and then going back up in the lyrics, and in such a fast pace, and making sure that she hits every half step, which is not an easy thing to do. It's a very interesting opener, and it grabs you. Tide Us Over has that more rubato feel at the beginning, but then it gets into a more funky and a sedated funky feel, more R&B-ish at the end. It does repeat lyrics at the end, but it's a really nice touch and really beautiful. One of the more tangible things that you can grab to as a listener. Until the Next Foal is this very whimsical and even atmospheric song at times. I love all these chromatic approaches in the verse. And again, another really, really interesting song. Thang is this gospel-y kind of song, and probably the most straightforward song at that point. But even still, she throws in some more modal approaches and more chromatic approaches on the song. Even though the chorus is very simplistic, it still has those parts of harmonic dissonance and makes for an interesting song, even if it is simplistic. The best song on here, though, is Touch in Mind. It's fantastic. It's absolutely gorgeous. It is honestly one of the best songs that she's ever written. It has the most simplistic of all of her melodies on there, but that doesn't mean that it's not interesting. There's these chromatic approaches going back into the diatonic ideas that she is using, and it's absolutely gorgeous. The chorus itself, even though it's very simplistic and on one note, the idea that she has this 4/4 sound, but she's using 3 syllables throughout it, makes for this very interesting rhythmic and time idea. It's so beautiful. The flowing guitar and piano parts add so much to there. I think from there, you start to get a little bit into that more weird side. The Longing Deep Down, I personally don't really like the song. It's not for me at all. It's not bad, it's just not interesting to me. It's the most out there, and I'm not a huge fan of the chorus. And the spoken word parts are interesting, but again, doesn't really hold the same effect to me. But at least for that part, after that, you get the most completely straightforward song on the album, which is You Have to Dance. And it feels like a breath of fresh air at that moment, because it is the funkiest song on the album. It's the most simplistic. It feels like it could be a hit really easily. It's the most simplistic in terms of the lyrics as well, but it's fun. It's, again, bringing back to that funk idea that she knows so well. I think maybe she knew that The Longing Deep Down was a very out there song, so she's kind of sprinkling it before she gets to another out there song, No Now. Again, one that is a little bit grating in the chorus and is a little bit out there. Throughout the end of the album, I'll say it gets a little bit, it strays away a little bit from the more conventional ideas, if you will, conventional, and goes for the more out there, more free-formed ideas where the melody is really out there as well. For example, All Limbs Are very straightforward for the most part with this piano idea, and it's just flowing between a couple different notes. But the melody itself is so chromatic in approach that it makes for this very interesting and very jarring song at times. Ready to Rise is also one that gets really jarring at times. It starts rubato with this very atonal idea, and then it goes eventually into this very staccato melody that at points comes in and then kind of does this free-flowing other like post-verse idea with sometimes some spoken word. What I really like about it though is this duplet feel on the bass and guitar at points. It keeps making this song bounce out. And then eventually it comes into this crescendo of so much power with fast-paced drums and gets a little bit chaotic at times. So it's a really interesting song. Then you get Dancing the Animal. This one goes back a little bit to a more structured idea with funk ideas with the bass and the guitar and a little bit of drum at times, which is nice to hear because most of this album doesn't really feature a lot of drum. So at least you get a little bit of sense of time in here. But what happens with this song is that it changes feels and it changes pace of the song. Sometimes it slows down, sometimes it gets really frenetic and fast paced. So at least with that more straightforward idea, at least there is something interesting to grasp onto. And then with Others, the last song on the album, again, another a little bit more straightforward in approach, except for the chorus, or the pre-chorus is a little bit jarring at times with just how fast she's saying some words and how much words she is using. But there's some saxophone parts and even a trumpet part that kind of blares a little bit too much over the rest of the song at points. But it's an interesting closer, and through all of it, what I can say is this is one of the more interesting albums that I listened to all year. It is a fantastic journey, even if sometimes it's a little bit jarring. I like to see what she is doing as an artist and the fact that she's pushing herself even past D+Evolution, which was a completely different sound for her. It's really cool to hear that. Is it the most approachable album? Not at all. If you are on the fringes of jazz, this might be a hard album for you to get into, especially from the beginning. At least at the beginning, you get some more conventional ideas in time, so you can have something to work with. Because once you get to that rubato and more atonal and lack of tonal center sound, it gets hard to appreciate that. But I think because I've been able to listen to some of her other stuff, I appreciate a lot of the stuff that's on here, even if I don't like all of it. It's definitely going to be in my top 50. It's a fantastic listen, and if you are an Esperanza Spalding fan and especially loved her D+Evolution album, take a look at this. It's going to be really out there for a lot of people, but if you are interested in that type of idea, I urge you to listen to this. It is absolutely incredible and such an interesting journey to go on. But that is my time. Thank you so much for watching. If you do like this album, of course, give this video a like. Let me know what you love or hate about this album. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you like what I'm doing and haven't already, please, I implore you to do so. That would be the most important thing. Share this with your friends if you think that they would think this is interesting, and just keep watching my videos. So a little bit later in the week, I'm going to be doing the next part of the Digging Through Discography, but on Sunday, I'm going to have an even more interesting album, probably the most interesting album that I've listened to all year. But I'm not going to spoil that. You're just going to have to wait until Sunday to find out. Until then, this is The Music Fan, and I am signing off.